guys, so today we're starting Unit 3, Length, Area, and Volume. So you should have this page here. That is your cover page. So check. You should have this page that I have here, your work checklist, this thing, check. So you are checking these things as you go through. Data tracker, you should have for Unit 3, check. Ignore vocabulary, cross out. And today we are going to talk about systems of measurement. So perimeters and circumference specifically. Next, we have unit analysis, adding imperial units, converting measurements, surface area, and then ending on volume in 3.4. So we'll have one hand in for this, one review, and we are skipping the project. Okay, so today, 3.1a, systems of measurements notes. So right here, we just have to review a couple terms before we begin. So perimeter, if you remember, is the outside of your shape. So the continuous line that surrounds an object. So surrounding an object. Along the outside. So if I'm talking about the perimeter of the square, it's a continuous line surrounding an object along the outside. So this line here is my perimeter. Okay, so to calculate perimeter, we can use a formula. So the formula for calculating the perimeter of a square, since I have 4 sides that are the exact same, I can find my perimeter, just do 4 times my side length. So 4 times S. Okay, so I could just do 4 times, and my side length is 5. So 4 times 5 meters, and I get 20 meters is my perimeter. Now, if you don't like having to use formulas, you can just remember, well, perimeter is just the distance around. So I could just do 5 meters plus 5 plus 5 plus 5. So 5 plus 5 plus another 5 plus another 5. And I will get 20 again. So I don't care which way you use, I just need you to show your work. So whichever way you use, show your work. I know that you can add this up in your head probably, but whatever method, just show it. So if you're just adding it up in your head, show that you're adding it up on your page. For a rectangle, it's a little bit different. I have 2 sides that are the same and another 2 sides are the same. So remember, the longest side, we label your length. Shorter side is your width. So to find my perimeter, I can just do 2 times my length plus 2 times my width. So finding my perimeter, so length and width. So my perimeter would be 2 times my length plus 2 times my width, or my length is 8. So 2 times 8 plus 2 times 3. And then remember your order of operations. So we have to do multiplying before we can do addition. So 2 times 8, I get 16. And 2 times 3, I get 6. And lastly, I can finally add. So 16 plus 6, I get 22. And if I take a look here, my units are meters. Now, once again, you do not have to use this formula. You can just, okay, here, I'm going to start at this side, and I'm going to go along my perimeter. So here I have 3 meters plus 8 meters plus another 3 meters plus another 8 meters. And I add all those together, and I get 22 meters. So same thing, just whichever method you choose, remember, show your work. Now, when I have an irregular shaped object, I just have to do the adding up all my sides because there isn't really a formula for that. So just one method. So you just basically need to pick a place to start. And I would suggest just going around the entire thing instead of like in order, instead of just trying to add them up willy-nilly. So let's just, doesn't matter where you start, let's just start here and go this way. Okay, so I have 2 plus 4 plus 1 plus 3 plus 3.5, and my last side is 4.5. So there's my entire perimeter. So 2 plus 4 plus 1 plus 3 plus 3.5 plus 4.5. And I get 18. Now there's no units for this one. So in our above example, my units were meters. There is no units here. So you can just leave it as 18. It doesn't need units. Or if you wanted to be super nitpicky, you could say 18 units. But I don't expect you to have to do that. So just 18 is fine for me. Okay, next page. Circumference. So all circumferences is just perimeter of a circle, basically. So it's our enclosing boundary of a circular object. In other words, the perimeter of a circle. Okay. So to calculate circumference, you need to know a few things about the circle. So in our previous examples, we had to know the length of the sides. With circles, we need to know either the diameter, so right here, diameter is the distance across the circle from one side to another. So here I have the diameter of my circle, so right across. And it is represented by D. And my radius is the distance from the origin, is how we say it in math, but all this means is the center of your circle to an outside edge. So here's the center of my circle, or the origin, to the outside edge, and that is my radius. You probably remember from previous math classes how to go from radius to diameter, diameter to radius. So in order to go from a diameter to a radius, I know that my radius is just going to be half of my diameter. So I would just take my diameter, divide it by 2. Okay, if I have the radius and I need to find my diameter, I will just multiply it by 2. So you can always go from one to the other, but since we have, if you look below here, formulas for diameter and radius, you do not really have to. So to find the perimeter or circumference of a circle, we will take the number pi and multiply it by our diameter, or we will take 2, multiply that by pi, and then multiply that by our radius. So it's going to depend on whether you have your diameter or your radius, whichever you want to use. Now, pi, in previous classes, you might have used 3.14 and just put that into your calculator, but I don't want you to do that anymore. I want you to use the actual pi button in your calculator, so just take a moment to see where that is. I don't want you putting in 3.14 because pi, as we know, actually goes on for a bit. So 3.141592654, so on and so forth. Pi is a larger number. When we start using just a shortened version of it, we're going to get numbers that are a little bit off and your answers aren't going to be completely correct. So you're going to use the pi button in your calculator for these examples and in your assignment. Okay, so finding the perimeter of this. Now, remember, perimeter is the distance along the outside. So I have some lines that I don't actually need. So if I take a look at my distance on the outside, here I have 4 meters. Okay, so if I'm trying to find my perimeter, I do 4 meters, and then this length. Now this length, since this is a rectangle, is going to also be 2 meters. But then I have this distance around the circle. Now this line doesn't matter because it's not on the outside. So my outside is this. Okay, so I know that this bit is 2 meters, but I have to figure out what this is. Now this is not a full circle, but a semicircle, a half circle. So in order to find my length of this, I could take, well, what would be a whole circle and divide it by 2. So the distance around a whole circle would be either pi times diameter or 2 times pi times radius. Now let's see what I have here. I could actually use both, but I have this line. And since it goes from one end of the circle to the other, I know that it is a diameter, and my diameter is 4 meters. So I can use this pi times diameter 1. Now, if I calculate my circumference, I'm going to get too big of a number because I only have half a circle. So since I only have half a circle, I can just divide it by 2 because I have half of a circle. And then just putting in our number, so our diameter of 4 meters. So I get pi times 4 meters divided by 2. And calculating that in your calculator, making sure you are using your pi button, not using 3.14. And you get 6.2831, so on and so forth, meters. Now don't round yet, we won't round until the end. So you can even just cut it off at like a couple decimal places and you'll be fine, but I'll just keep a few more. So let's figure out our full perimeter now. So first if I start here, I have 4 meters. So my perimeter is going to be 4 meters plus 2 meters plus this distance around this half circle, which we figured out was 6.283, I'll say, meters, plus, and then finally this last 2 meters, and then I'm back to where I started. So 1, 2, 3, 4 things, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and just calculating that, and you get 14.283, so on and so forth, meters. Now that we're at the end, so I figured out my perimeter, I can round. So in these next units, I am perfectly fine with rounding to just 1 decimal place. So in the past, in the last couple units, we've been dealing with money, and I've gotten you to round to 2 decimal places, but you do not have to do that anymore. So I am fine with just rounding to 1. So rounding to 1, draw your line, take a peek over the wall. We are going to have to round that to up to a 3. So I'm going to have about 14.3 meters for my perimeter. You have a worksheet, so perimeter and circumferences, very similar to this. It's not very long, and you can go on to that. All right.